大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. Last night, as my brain was fading and I was finally falling asleep at the late hour of about 10:30 p.m., I happened to remember seeing something pop up on my feed. A video discussion between ex-Fox host Tucker Carlson and U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. Well, today I decided to watch the thing against my better judgment and, well, here we go. Ted Cruz. He's a fervent anti-Chinese activist and somehow still senator after all these years. You may remember Cruz from his attempt to overturn the 2020 U.S. election results when he blamed school shootings on declining church attendance and video games. Or perhaps you remember Cruz from his attempt to make it a federal crime in America to boycott Israel or Israeli settlements in Palestine. But if you haven't had the displeasure of making Cruz's acquaintance yet, get ready.
So you've come out for regime change in Iran, as distinct just from taking out the nuclear sites. What does regime change look like in Iran?
Somebody else in charge.
How do you get there?
Look, that ultimately has to be a popular uprising from the people.
Right off the bat, we can see his smug and frumpy face publicly pushing for regime change in a sovereign nation. He's talking about waging war on Iran to effect an insurrection. That's right. To all you China haters out there who keep trying to convince me China is such a global, scary threat, though it never seems to actually go to war or do anything. Within 10 seconds of the interview, we already have an elected U.S. official publicly calling to violently and illegally overthrow another country's leadership on the other side of the world. Get why I don't care what you say now? Let's hear his justification for risking World War III.
Is America better off with a country that has a leader who hates us and wants to kill us? Or to have a country with a leader who likes us and wants to be friends with us?
See the problem? Does anyone see the problem here? The reason it's okay to overthrow another government is that it would be better for America to have leaders in place who like us. I mean, this should just be the end of the video. What else do you need to hear? If China decided it wanted a U.S. leader in place who was friendly to China and then announced publicly it wanted to violently overthrow the American government and lead an insurrection, you would just be totally in favor of that, right? Then he just goes on to list other leaders that he would like to illegally overthrow.
When you have countries that have dictators that are viciously anti-America, Venezuela, Maduro hates us. Would we be better off with Maduro out of power? Absolutely. I want our enemies out of power, and I want our friends in power.
I could not agree more. The question is, how do you get there?
Of course.
And we've been trying to kill Maduro for quite some time. We have troops there, as you know.
I don't know that we've been trying to kill Maduro.
We have. And I think you know that. And
okay, I don't know that.
Okay, well, as a statement of fact, we have.
Okay, well, Cruz is not aware of any attempts to kill Venezuelan President Maduro. Let's see what the internet says. Venezuela arrested some Americans and alleged a plot to assassinate Maduro, and the CIA denied it. And we have in front of us, again, a high-ranking elected U.S. official bringing up Maduro in a conversation about violently overthrowing governments. So I guess I would say that the jury's out on this one, but it does seem quite possible. Then Carlson brings up regime change in Cuba that's failed for decades and says that regime changes are hard. And then Cruz says one of the dumbest things of the entire interview.
We'd be better off in China without Xi there. Should we invade China and topple Xi? Of course not.
First of all, what do you mean, of course not? Of course not here only means we couldn't get away with it. So don't be fooled by him pretending he objects based on some moral grounds. Remember the discussion taking place. And second of all, in what way would the U.S. be better off without Xi running China? Was the U.S. better before Xi was in charge? When has the U.S. ever been better off with regards to China? Never, actually. And as Cruz is espousing his warped, ultra-neocon perspective, Carlson, to his credit, slips in an extremely effective jab. Listen how he just throws this in there.
Should we invade China and topple Xi? Of course not.
Better off with no national debt.
There are lots of things.
Totally.
But Cruz slides right past it, but wow, that's a damning pushback. Tucker's saying, you know what would definitely help America and not cost any lives? How about we focus on our internal issues? Very powerful, actually. So good on him for that.
So with the Ayatollah in Iran, saying you're for regime change, I don't view as complicated. I mean, the guy literally leads mobs chanting death to America. Mm-hmm. So that's not good.
Right, it's not complicated. Well, if he were in America chanting death to America, that would be completely legal. So yeah, it's not complicated. You want to illegally kill someone for doing something that is legal in America and legal in Iran. You're psychotic. It's just simple. Then Cruz goes on a ramble about how he doesn't say that the regime change has to be violent, but that he supports it. And he starts comparing his policy views to Carlson's. He gaslights us by claiming to not be an interventionist.
I am a non-interventionist hawk,
while literally pushing for intervention. Then he praises Donald Trump and drops this little propaganda piece. If you want to know how brainwashed my fellow Americans are, just listen to how smoothly this rolls off his tongue. People actually believe this. Listen to this.
The best way to avoid war is being strong. That weakness and isolationism, I think, encourages war.
That's right, everyone. To avoid war, we need to wage war. That's essentially the entire neocon excuse that works wonderfully on both the left and the right in America, who never quite seem to ask questions like, wait, is Iran about to go to war with us suddenly? When did that happen? Then they both reiterate the far-right neocon perspective and both agree.
You said that the single criterion for making decisions about America's foreign policy is America's national interest.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
This sounds fine, but in case you didn't notice, it happens to be missing the other part of Earth affected by what America does, everyone else. And in case you're not getting what I'm saying, let me be super clear. The best thing for America to do is wipe out all other governments and absorb all countries and form a United Countries of Earth. That's the best thing for the US to do. I don't support that. So no, it isn't just whatever's good for America. There is, believe it or not, more to life than just what's good for America. Then Cruz rambles about Syria and Obama for a while and how he considered supporting violence there too, and scoffs at the idea of international norms. Remember this, international community, when you hear the US talking about international norms.
He would say, well, we need to defend international norms. Like, what the hell's an international norm? I don't know what it is, but I'm not interested in putting U.S. servicemen and women in harm's way to defend one.
Then Carlson points to the Syria regime change being a total failure, and Cruz claims ignorance of the subject. Then, rather confusingly, Cruz says he objected to the U.S. invasion of Iraq.
I also opposed the Iraq War. I think the Iraq War was a serious mistake.
Now, keep in mind, the reason we invaded Iraq, according to our government, was that Saddam Hussein was a super bad guy, and Iraq had, or almost had, weapons of mass destruction and hated America. That's what the U.S. public understood as the reasons for the invasion. Cruz was against that, he says. But now, Iran's leader is a super bad guy, and Iran has or almost has weapons of mass destruction, and they hate America, we're told, and that's why Cruz supports going into Iran. What a crackpot. Then Carlson drops another big bomb.
Is there a successful regime change that the United States supported that you're aware of in the last 100 years?
Any regime changes that were successful, ever?
Sure, defeating the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union collapsing, winning the Cold War.
Then, yes, you heard that right. Ted Cruz just publicly proclaims that the United States of America was responsible for overthrowing the USSR, and then says we should do the exact same thing to the PRC, China. Now, if you're a history buff, you may be confused to learn that it was, in fact, according to Cruz, the United States who was responsible for the collapse of the USSR. I know I was. But what's even more surprising, to me at least, is that a U.S. senator is calling to overthrow China in the same way. I mean, we're talking wild, fervent, crazy aggressive anti-peace rhetoric. How on earth does anyone not see this? It's freaking insane what we're saying on the world stage. Then Cruz praises America's propaganda efforts overseas, and then Tucker asks if perhaps the U.S. should just stick to propaganda only rather than funding violence overseas.
We're all sort of focused on beating our adversaries abroad, but what is victory worth if our own country becomes what it is now? And maybe we're spending a little too much time focused abroad and not enough time focused on the people sleeping outside Union Station.
Cruz talks more about the USSR and how it was America shining light and truth on it that made it crumble. Carlson tries to bring the conversation back to taking care of homeless people in America and domestic issues. To that, Cruz blames Democrats for all the city's problems, and Tucker repeatedly tries to get Cruz to see that America is domestically failing and that it has nothing to do with Russia or Iran. Cruz endlessly talks about COVID and exposes some of the issues with this domestically weak U.S. government that we have, where everything is stalemated. It's all sort of revealing and interesting, but irrelevant. They talk about Israel, and Tucker asks how much our involvement costs and so on. But there's one part here that Tucker is completely off about, and I agree completely with Cruz here. For serious researchers of history and war, they will immediately know that this is actually completely true, though the general public doesn't seem to realize it. They're talking about the intelligence service in Israel and how valuable it is to the U.S. So listen to this part.
It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
Every country spies on or tries to spy on every other country, basically. I'm not going to go into the whole thing now, but long story short, it's true. When a country allows foreign nationals in during the normalization of relations, they are implicitly allowing some level of espionage into their country. And believe it or not, oftentimes spies are explicitly allowed. So he's right about that. Tucker asks if Cruz is funded by Israel, and he basically just admits it, but then releases this very strange barrage of denials about the nature of AIPAC.
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby. It's the AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action. I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that.
AIPAC, for those who don't know, is an extremely powerful Israel lobbying group in the U.S. If you don't know what lobbying is, that's America's word for legal bribery. They lobby for U.S. aid to Israel, for protecting Israel's best interests, and frequently give big checks to leaders of our government. In other words, they have massive power over people like Cruz by way of funding. But Cruz, rather confusingly, tries to deny AIPAC's nature repeatedly. You really have to watch this video yourself if you want to see how ridiculous it gets, because it's very long. But it devolves into Cruz trying desperately to Jordan Peterson the entire conversation. Like, it depends on what you mean by the word is, and so on. It's quite a fiery exchange.
The law on lobbying on behalf of someone, it is, I hire you and you lobby on behalf of me. I direct you. Does Israel direct AIPAC? No, they're not lobbying on behalf of them. Or do they care about them? Yes, but...
Do you think that, it's just interesting because what you're now describing in a very defensive way, I will say, is foreign influence over our politics.
No.
But basically you walk away from the conversation realizing that Cruz is completely bought and paid for by the Israeli government, and he doesn't deny that, although he sort of denies it. It's kind of strange. Then they break into name calling for a while, back and forth, and by a while I mean like 10 minutes of this stuff. So go watch it later if you want to see just how Weasley Mr. Cruz becomes when he outright admits being on Israel's payroll and then tries desperately to pretend that the largest and most powerful Israel lobby has nothing to do with Israel. Quite illuminating.
It's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are. And rather than be honorable enough to say it right to my face, you are in a sleazy, feline way implying it, or just asking questions about the Jews. I'm not asking questions about the Jews.
I mean, this should be a career ender, but it's not, because America. Ted does reveal one of his motives for being Israel first, and it's, well, religious.
Those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel.
Yes, Christians, you are commanded by God to support Netanyahu. And get a load of this logic, dear viewers.
The Ayatollah is a religious zealot. He is a lunatic, but a particularly dangerous kind of lunatic, because he's driven by religious fervor. When he says death to America and death to Israel, I believe him.
That's right. The Christian Lord God told Ted Cruz to support Israel. And we need to bring death to Iran because the Ayatollah is super religious and he says death to America. It all makes perfect sense. Ted then reveals to the world an extensive set of assassinations that Iran has been attempting on virtually all American leaders.
They're actively trying to murder Donald J. Trump.
Is there... Okay, so you're aware of a plot to kill Trump?
Yes, that Iran is paying for. And by the way...
Wait, when?
It has been over the last, I'd say, 18 months to 2 years.
In the United States?
In the United States, yes. And let me point out...
Has anyone been arrested?
For the Trump attempted assassination, no. But they are also actively paying Iranian hitmen to murder Mike Pompeo when he was President Trump's first Secretary of State, the first term, rather. John Bolton, when John Bolton was National Security Advisor to President Trump, and a guy named Brian Hook, who was Assistant Secretary of State.
My God, I really didn't realize that all these people are dead. Oh, they aren't? So Iran has all these attempts on Donald Trump and virtually every other leader, and yet not one of them was known by anyone, and none of them succeeded. So surprise, Iran is apparently trying to assassinate everyone.
If there's evidence that Iran paid hitmen to kill Donald Trump and is currently doing that, where's that? Like, what are you even talking? I've never heard that before.
Okay.
Where's the evidence? Who are these people? Why haven't they been arrested? Why are we not at war with Iran?
Yes, I mean, shouldn't we just immediately go to war if they're trying to destroy America?
You sincerely believe that right now the Iranian government is trying to murder our president?
Yes.
You sincerely believe right now?
Absolutely.
And yet you are not calling for military action against the government that's trying to murder our president. Can you explain that?
I don't think they're very effective. I do think we should, by the way, America is
You're willing to take that risk?
I think we should protect the president and we should take out our enemies.
Exactly, guys. Ted Cruz is not worried about all these alleged assassination attempts because they haven't succeeded yet. It all makes sense. And Tucker really nails him on this point. It's just ridiculous if he actually believes this, what his response is. Cruz then rambles about how, sure, he wants to overthrow governments abroad, but he doesn't want to spread democracy. His big thing is God wants him to go kill people who are religious and dangerous. Then they talk about other stuff a bit, and then they go back to this strange paradox about how Ted Cruz both believes the United States government is under attack from an army of Iranian hitmen, and yet simultaneously doesn't support directly defending ourselves by immediately starting a full-scale war against Iran. Then they ramble on more of the back and forth about subjects already covered, and then they discuss, quite casually and publicly, assassinating the head of a foreign nation.
Why don't you take it seriously enough to support killing the Ayatollah in response to protect our president? But you don't. This doesn't even make any sense.
They go back and forth, and then there's this now infamous clip in which Mr. Cruz reveals the superficial level of research that he's done with regards to Iran.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not
okay.
even... You don't know anything about Iran.
Oh, man, that is brutal. Wow. I mean, I'm just going to come right out and say this. Before making this video, I had no idea how many people were in Iran. And I definitely didn't know the percent of which ethnicity was where and so on. But you see, I didn't need to know those things. I'm not trying to overthrow their government and kill their people. I'm not trying to fund a proxy war against them. I'm not backed by an enormous Israeli lobby. But if I were pushing to attack them, I rather think I would be expected to know something about their country. This conversation was a bit entertaining, but also quite sad for me. I have to say I agree with Tucker on almost every single thing he said in this discussion, especially this little comment here.
We should be very careful about entering into more foreign wars that don't help us when our country is dying.
That's the point. Let's try to heal our nation a bit, shall we? We have tons of domestic issues, and we really can't afford to be out there pissing off yet more countries and damaging even more relationships. Then they go on to Russia and Ukraine, which is not super interesting, but there's one part which is very revealing. Here, Ted is explaining to Tucker the story of the conflict. He skips right over the US's involvement in overthrowing Ukraine's government in 2014, and this super awkward silence comes with Tucker calling him on it.
And he didn't want to jeopardize his ability to get gas to Europe.
Right.
So, in 2015, Putin started a project called Nord Stream 2.
Did anything happen in 2014?
In terms of what?
Wasn't there a coup in Ukraine run by the Obama administration?
Let me finish telling, I told you, we'll take lots of digressions in a second. Let me finish telling the narrative.
Yes, the narrative. Anyway, they go on and on about Russia and Ukraine for a very long time. But there's this great exchange that, again, I have to say I agree with Tucker on.
Russia is backstopped by China, and I recommend that you go there and see it. It is way nicer than Washington, D.C. Way nicer. To me, that's a tragedy. I was horrified and angry at my leaders, including you. It's like, I want to live in a country that's nice, with low food costs and no homeless people.
All right,
I don't understand why that's too much to ask.
Later, Cruz says he hates communism and makes a comment that China is engaged in a 1,000-year war against us.
And I think China is engaged in a 1,000-year war against the United States.
Okay.
They're trying to defeat us.
Well, Ted, I don't care if a country's engaged in a 1,000-year war against us. That's not a reason to go to war with them. Every country in the world should be pursuing what they think is the best way for them to expand and grow into their best futures. They should be able to live their own destinies. If China crumbles into a Tseng dynasty-esque broken state exploited by corporations and nations before collapsing, or if China grows to be the most powerful nation on earth, or if China plateaus and kind of falls out of the limelight and keeps its head down, is up to China, not you, not the United States. China has the right to its own destiny, as does the United States, as does Iran. Then, of course, there's this random America supremacist exchange between the two of them.
Why are we a better country founded on better values than China?
What's the difference? I'll tell you why.
And I know...
Because the whole purpose of America is to protect the God-given rights that each person possesses by virtue of being created by God.
Amen.
Exactly. America's better than China because it was founded on the principle of religion and that everyone is super special and has infinite rights, except for non-Americans who don't even have the right to their own country, to their own leadership even. God, we're amazing. So there you have it. America's the best country in the world. We will go around and kill whoever we want because God tells us to. And if people don't like that, then they'd better watch out because they might be next. For the most part, I agree with Tucker on almost everything he said, I think. And Ted, I agreed with about half or so, maybe a little less, of what he said. I just hope that we don't get sucked into another endless, pointless, bloody war. You know, the kind that you say you're waging to avoid war, that kind. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel. More videos are coming very soon. Until next time, I'm Nathan Rich. Thanks everybody. 谢谢.